Excited to have Teague Parker, the founder of Improv for Wellness, back on our show today to talk about his passion, teaching. We're all teachers in our own right. We all have information to convey. So today we're going to talk about the different philosophies and approaches to teaching on a mass scale, how teaching can be seen as an art form, and how we can better support and show a little respect to our teachers that are out there. Much love to all the teachers and educators in this world. Hope you get something out of this conversation. We'll see you on the other side. But first, a message from our sponsor. Our healing journey can be difficult and might feel lonely at times. That's why I love sound baths. When we can get together in a community, we intrinsically support and feel supported by others. And that combined energy can help us go deeper into our own healing journeys. And all you have to do is just lay there for 1 hour and listen to beautiful healing sounds. I'm a sound healing practitioner, and I hold sound baths on a regular basis in the greater Seattle area. You can find my next sound baths on my website at adamrealhealing.com. That's Adam, A-D-A-M, Real, R-I-E-H-L, Healing, Healing.com. AdamRealHealing.com. Your healing is worth your time. And now an uninterrupted podcast with Teague Parker. All right, welcome back to our show. Today I'm sitting with a friend and repeat guest, Mr. Teague Parker. Teague is the creator of Improv for Wellness, has done a lot with improv for comedy, improv for acting, all different kinds of theater work that you've done. What I'm really excited, we actually had a conversation a while back about Improv for Wellness and how that impact is helping with moving into schools, moving into theater programs, and giving students a different type of teaching modality and learning modality, and how that's been really received. And that conversation is about a year and a half old. You know, we've been catching up with each other on at times, but our audience hasn't really heard about Improv for Wellness in a little while. But it's a beautiful, beautiful program. And so what Teague and I are going to talk about today so Teague has a very unique situation where he is a teacher, but not part of the public school system, teaching system, right? So he goes into schools, whether public, private, or even sometimes theater groups, and is teaching different types of learning modalities. So how to lean into like some of the anxieties that we have, how to work with some of the fears that we have into bringing that forth into more of a gift, right? And so, you know, in a very unique way, Teague is part of the school system, but an outsider. And so that, I think, gives a unique perspective as an observer to say, okay, so this is what I'm seeing with the students that I'm working with from the public school system, or the structured school system, versus a little more freedom and a little more maybe personalized teaching that you've discovered with Improv for Wellness. So before we really get into the topic today, let's just kind of refresh about Improv for Wellness, because it's such a beautiful program and it's grown so much since our listeners heard about it last. So maybe just kind of give us an understanding of, like, you know, basis of what the program is, and give us an update on where you're at with it.
Yeah. So thank you for all of that beautiful recap too. The Improv for Wellness program is basically a curriculum that I've created that uses the principles of improv and a lot of improv activities and games and such to go to people and teach them, how do you care more about yourself? How do you learn to trust your impulses? And how do you learn to understand that everything that you do is a form of expression? So everything that you do is a form of creativity. And that's just what I do. And like, I'll work with theater groups and improvisers and stuff, and we'll figure out, like, how do we do good improv comedy and just perform a scene. But really, I just focus on a lot of people that don't even care about performing. And let's play, let's get you curious about yourself, and let's just help you through experiential learning. Trust that you are enough and you are interesting enough, and we can use all of these different ideas to tap into our imagination and our creativity to unpack things about ourselves, and maybe use that as a reflection tool to identify actions we want to take in life, and to find out, like, what are the smallest steps we can take towards the ideal version of ourselves, or just identify those pieces within you.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what I see it as, and I'm still working on the smaller version of that, but I get excited, and I think it does a lot of different things. So it's like, whoever you are, they're tools to help you reclaim more of who you are.
And that's, so I have two teenage daughters now. Well, almost. My youngest will be 14 in about a week, and I have an 18-year-old. And being a child at one point in time myself, I don't remember all of the childlike kind of things, but I do remember being awkward as shit. I was a very awkward child. I was overweight at my age, didn't have a lot of friends, and just never really felt like I had a place. And so one of the things that I think is so important about what you're doing with Improv for Wellness is you're teaching kids it's okay to be silly. It's okay to not have, this big fucking goal in life. It's okay to just be with yourself, be the human being that you are. Because I think especially as a teenager, we get that bred out of us a lot, like, oh, don't do the silly things. Oh, don't do this because you're going to, that's not part of society, or don't do that because that's going to look different and blah, blah, blah. Right. We keep being told not to do, don't do that. Don't act out. Don't embrace that. So what you're doing is you're teaching people, the kids and these students to get back into themselves and to trust. Yeah. And you used a really cool word that probably gets a bad rep, impulse.
Yeah.
Right? Trust your impulses. Yeah. And impulse and intuition, I think, are two very, very similar things, right? Impulse may seem like something that we don't have control over, and intuition may seem like something that we've finally trusted, right? But I think both are very interchangeable. Impulse can be an unattentive intuition, right? Yeah. Impulse could be that first thing where we might not trust our intuition yet, but there's an impulse to say, hey, go over there and do that thing, but you decide not to. But the more we start to trust that voice that says, hey, go over there and do that thing, that becomes our intuition because we trust that voice now. And so that impulse, where it could seem impulsive, right? Where it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to raise my arm. I'm going to kick that person next to me. That could be that instinctual thing that we're learning to listen to. So as you find those impulses and as you lean into them, then they become the instincts that we trust. And that trust your gut, trust your intuition, trust all these things about our lives. But if we're never given an opportunity to trust those things, then they remain as impulses, and impulses are bad. We shouldn't listen to our impulses. Impulses cause addictions. Impulses cause harm, But impulse, when understood, leads to your intuition.
Yeah, and I actually love that that flow of impulse and intuition, because I think the thing that I try to help people, or the space I try to create, is let's just practice listening to our impulses. Our impulses don't have to be good. They don't have to lead us towards something positive, but we have to trust that it's a revealing tool. Something in you said, walk across the room, go over there. Something in you said, well, I want to pick up that paintbrush, or I don't know, I like spreadsheets. Why do I want to open a spreadsheet and put some information in? Whatever it is, because sometimes we can also think of like a positive impulse as like, I want to move and I want to be a dancer,
Right.
Which is there, it's beautiful, but those small things that can actually be the gateway to huge revelations of like, that's interesting. I want to put my hand in the dirt right now.
Right.
And listening to that impulse, maybe that leads to an understanding of gardening, and maybe it leads to plants, green, nature, all that stuff. Or maybe it also is like, I put my hand in the dirt and I didn't like how that felt. So now I just know, like, I listened to that impulse, I know that, and maybe I'll try it again later. But the system of our impulse has to go through a training process, because, like you said, it gets beaten out of us in constant different ways. And, I work with a lot of youth who are in that in-between spot of, they're in the process of getting beat up by society, right, of what their impulses should or shouldn't be. And then I also work with a lot of adults who have gone through a system that they are now either fine with the system and fine with, like, I know my life and this is how I want it to be, or feel lost and feel like, I don't know what my passion is, I don't know what my drive is, all of those things. And for both of those categories, I try to use improv as a way to reveal, for the people that feel lost, like, well, let's not even worry about a path, but let's just worry about like, let's take steps and let's enjoy like how your body moves and how what you want to do in a moment to maybe figure out what you might want out of a lifetime. Or for the people that are like really love the way that they've been raised and how they've gone through life and they've figured out all those answers. Cool. Let's just make them even more specific then.
Adding on to it.
Let's add on
There you
to
go.
it, and you'll either find even more ways to love and appreciate the life you live, or you'll start to crack at some of those things of like, oh, this small, potentially really small element of my life actually doesn't fit with what I want, so I can address that, or I can leave it consciously. Let's just bring things to the conscious so that we can make choices on it.
Right. That's beautiful. You know, I think there's a lot of truth in identifying our senses, right? So, you know, we have our five senses, our sight, smell, touch, taste, all that fun stuff, right? But and you know, we have an open opportunity to explore those senses, right? But as we start to get into like structured learning and things like that, our internal senses are the ones that become kind of challenged. Our sense of self, our common sense, our sense of humor, right? These are those internal senses that we have. And I think a lot of ways the school system that we have is trying to kind of like conform into this box, right? And it's, you know, maybe it may not set, actually I think it may have set out that way, you know, intentionally. One of the ideas for schooling was to provide a common knowledge base, so that the idea is that if everybody has common knowledge base, then we can all grow as society with the same answers, right? And that I think maybe worked for a little while until the advent of the internet, and then we found out that like there are way too many answers out there for these questions, and some are right, some are wrong. It depends on who you fucking ask, right? And so I think that, you know, a lot of the parameters that we put into schooling and the way that kids are taught has worked up into a point, but needs to be addressed and needs to be adjusted. A lot of the structure, the structure of our public school system was based off of factory workers. Right.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Right. And we've gotten far away from factory workers. Right. So, and if you look at that, it says, okay, so we go to school at, let's say, 8 o'clock in the morning. Shifts usually start at 8 o'clock in the morning. We go until lunchtime. Then we have about an hour for break. You work till about lunchtime. You got an hour for break. Then you go back to work and you work until about 3 or 4. We go to school, go back to school. It's about 3 or 4, and then we're done with our day, right? So where it was kind of training us to get into that mentality of the workforce. The workforce has vastly changed, right? And so changed in the sense that we're not doing a lot of factory work anymore because it's all automated now, which is fine. But are we still being taught in that same way? But a lot of the work that we're doing is project management and group learning, group think, right? And so that didactic way, which we talked about before we hit record, but by didactic means we're taught, right? We're being taught something. Humans are didactic by nature because when we're born, we're very immobile, right? We don't know what we're doing. We can't hold our heads up. We can't see straight, right? And we have to be taught how to use the tools around us because the world is constantly changing, right? So when my mom was born, is very, very different world than when I was born. And so if I was born mimetically, like horses, cows, animals, where we just look at our mom or look at our dad and say, okay, you're walking with your hoofs, cool, I can do that. Oh, you're eating that grass, cool, I can do that, right? It doesn't have to be physically taught. It's more learned by sight. And so, but didactic, we have to learn with the tools. We have to be born into this world and say, oh shit, there's a cell phone that has all this information on there. I better learn how to use that. There's a hammer. Should learn how to use that, right? And so there's this didactic way of learning that we've adopted to, but in my opinion, it's kind of lost its luster. You know, myself personally, and I'll speak to myself, I learn way better from doing. Right? Yeah. You can tell me something till you're blue in the face and it'll go one ear out the other. But if I can actually physically do the thing with you, it seats that information. And it really makes me understand that experiential learning. Now, layer that in with that didactic learning of, hey, this is why we do this, right? This is why we swing a hammer from the bottom, not from the top. You get more leverage, you get more power, you know, you can hit the nail, you know, you're not going to hit your finger, blah, 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 right? Those are those little nuances of the didacticness. But let's experiential learn. And I think that's one of the things I love the most about what you're doing and the approach you have is that it is experiential. It's get out there, face your fears, say something funny, say something not funny. Who fucking knows, right? Like just be with it, because the more you're with it, the more that experience lands, and then it becomes something that's more formed instead of something like impulsive, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of things popped in my head, and one of them is in my acting training at Western Washington, we do a lot of theater making, and so there's a lot of different ways we do that. But something that our professor taught us was when people are creating a piece of art together and making a scene or something like that, and everybody's talking about their ideas or talking about like, well, we could move this way and then let's all get together and we'll do this movement or something like that. When that keeps on going on for a while, you as an artist or an actor in that situation can just say, okay, show me. Just show me. I believe your idea. I believe, and I'm not going to try and talk us out of trying it, but let's try it, because that's going to get us actually experiencing this thing, and we'll have a better idea of it. And I think with what you were mentioning with the didactic learning, something that it has lost its luster in some ways, and I think what we can start to reclaim and empower is this idea that didactic learning creates you yourself as a filter in that process. You are a deep part of that process, but a lot of our systems don't let you believe that. So the power of our parents, guardians, whoever teaching us something is that we start to do the work internally of what does that mean to me? How do I see that in my life? How do I see that in my reality? And that's the evolution. If we work the other way, mimetic, thank you. Mimetically, then we would just copy every time. And there'd be slight changes because of environment and things, but not because of people. And because of people, things grow, things change, and we get to see new generations bring some ideas to a whole new level, or tell us, hey, we got to take a different course because I can see now how it hurts or helps us in these specific ways.
Yeah. Something came up to me is when you were talking about that. And, it seems to me now that our didactic approach has become mimetic. It's just become like, hey, I'm going to verbalize and sit here and just spit information at you, and you're going to copy that down, right? And we're in classrooms that are so big right now that kids don't have an opportunity to raise their hand and ask questions, and teachers don't really have the freedom and the time to tangent, right, to get tangential with some of those things, because a lot of times, like the best dialogue that I've been a part of comes from breaking away from whatever topic was being taught.
Right.
We tangentialize, we get off subject, we find these little threads that kind of pull us all over the place. But we're in a place now where we don't have that. We have 50 kids in a class, 37 kids in a class, right? There's not a lot of opportunity for kids to raise their hands. And even if there was, then the teacher wanted to create that environment, it's very unique for one teacher to do it. But most of these kids have probably been in schools that don't have that opportunity. So then they don't feel comfortable raising their hand. And then we lean into that mimetic kind of didactic system of like, hey, it's under the guise of didacticness, right? Hey, I'm going to teach you things. We're going to learn together. But I'm just literally copying down everything you say. I'm copying down the shit out of this book. I'm copying down the answer. And then I'm going to remember that until I don't need to remember it anymore. And then it's going to be gone. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're having an issue with right now is that we have this memorization learning technique. And for me, I can memorize shit, but it's not going to sit there. It's not going to stay. It'll be there until that information gets poured into whatever test or book report or whatever thing I need. And then 9 times out of 10, it's gone. right? Most of the stuff that I know now as a human being, I learned in my 20s, 30s, and 40s because it
Yeah.
was stuff that was interesting to me and it was exciting. Oh, I get to learn about this. I get to teach myself quantum physics. I get to learn about Hindu spirituality. Fucking great, you know? And through that, like I found teachers that would work with me with the dialogue that we had. Hey, here's the book that we're going to read. And now we're going to talk about that, you know, and open up that dialogue so that we can have conversational learning about that. And it's not just somebody sitting there spitting, you know, religious scriptures at me and expecting me to memorize Matthew 10:12 or whatever the hell it is.
Sure.
Okay, thou, that, and this and all this shit, right? It's like, I don't really understand what it means, but maybe I can recite it, you know? But finding those ways to really seat that information and to make it something that the kid is passionate about, I think is something that we're really missing. You know, we're expecting these kids to be the best at every subject. How realistic is that? How realistic is it for you to continue through life being the best at all of the things? That's a lot of fucking pressure to put on these kids, and not everybody rises to that, which is fine, you know. But my oldest kid graduated last May, and there were 10 valedictorians in their class.
Wow.
And then there were honors kids and all this stuff, but 10 kids that reached the
Whoa.
highest grade that they could possibly reach.
Yeah.
And then those kids are going to go out into the world thinking that they still need to maintain that type of achievement. And it's going to beat them up when they don't, right? And they realize that, like, oh shit, I'm just good at this, but why am I not good at all the other things like I used to be?
Yeah.
You know, and that's a lot for us to wrestle with. And there's not a lot of support for that after that is realized, right? You can have school counselors, maybe talk to your parents about it, but maybe the parents are still even bought into that idea of straight A's. You get fucking straight A's, right? Do the best you can. Man, I can barely even fucking pay my bills on time, right? You know, it's like, shit, how am I going to, you know, make sure that like all of these things are in order in my life as I get older? You know, it's like, I don't know. I think it puts unfair pressure on the individual to continue that type of success throughout their entire lives.
And there's a lot of things in that too, right? Of we as a culture for the valedictorians, we're celebrating that moment. And that is a huge achievement, and that is an important thing and worth celebration. And usually we're doing it from a place of and we've talked about this in the past, this idea of praise versus encouragement.
Right.
And this idea that when, not all the time, but there are times where we have valedictorians and things, and a school is praising them, meaning they're saying, you're so good, you did this thing, you're the best, all of those elements. And we're saying that from a place of it not actually being about the student.
Right.
It is about the school. It is about what that means for our community. It is about this assembly that celebrates all of that. And the student may have found their value and their strength within that. And praise can feel good. It's not inherently a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But then there's that other side of the encouragement of what did it take for that student to reach that spot? We're not doing the assembly to talk about like, hey, these were the steps that this student took, and these are the things that were really hard about it, and they sacrificed and like, you know, had to tap into their perfectionism sometimes, or maybe they didn't. And that we don't hold a mirror up to students in that. And if we did that, we would start to see like, if we're going to hold a mirror up to the valedictorians, then we're also creating hierarchy.
Right.
Of they're the best, and then the honor kids are pretty good, and then everyone else is, you know, everyone else.
Right.
And I never thought of this until you're mentioning it, but with like the straight A's and all that stuff, I feel like we've tapped into a modality of saying, in a traditional sense, C's are average, right? We've said C's are average, B's above average, A is like you're excelling.
Right.
But in our culture, I think we've definitely treated A's as average. We're saying that the A is the average.
Wow, that's...
Everything else is like, okay, you're not working hard enough, you're not smart enough, you're not achieving, because really you should be getting A's.
Right.
Because anybody that gets a C on their test is like, fuck, I got a C on my test. but that means you're getting it.
Yeah, you're getting the hang of it.
Right. You're
Yeah.
getting the hang of it. You got it. And like, we don't live in a culture where like most things should be C's and the rest can be A's because like that's where you put your extra effort in, or that it'd be okay of like these classes I'm just going to get C's because actually I want my time to go towards these things in my life. So I will skip this homework assignment.
Right.
I will not do that thing because I'll get a C, and I'm not just going to use it to avoid work and all that stuff, but I'm going to consciously choose me. I'm going to choose this topic. I'm going to give myself rest. And we just don't live in a community that does that all the time.
Wow. And that, for me, what that really just unlocked is our work ethic as we get older. If so I was very much, even though I wasn't a good student at all, I barely graduated. I was very much under the impact of my job is what I stand for. Okay. And that's very false. Like I know that now that my job does not make me who I am. The job does not define who I am. My job can be part of that definition, right? Especially if it's something altruistic or something you're proud of, something you're doing to change yourself or the world, whatever it is, right? But it was always lost on me that people can just go to work and then leave it and then come home and have a joyous life. And I think that's, for the straight A's versus the C's kind of idea that we're talking about is the straight A's are constantly now, it seems like they're going to be tied to their job now because they're tied to a qualifier. I've got to have this thing to show my worth. Right. Whereas if somebody just kind of scrapes by, kind of just does what they do, but gets through whatever that means. Right. Some people don't graduate and have beautiful lives, beautiful careers, all of this shit. Right. But let's say that they're just not like a career student. Right. Maybe they get out of work, got out of school, and they find a job that just, does enough for them, pays their bills, makes them happy, but it's not their life because that job provides the income so they can provide a full life for themselves.
Absolutely.
Right. And that was lost on me until I got out of my career and was like, oh shit, I don't have to work to prove my worth. That's great. I can have the income coming in from work and then have my worth be my free time, Yeah. And so I think, in a way, like we're kind of bastardizing that idea in saying like, no, you have to dedicate yourself to work. That's what we
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
That's what our goal is. And if you don't do that, then you're fucking off. You're not living to your potential. When are we going to reach our full potential? Right? I keep hearing that. One day I'm going to reach my full. I'm 42 years old. If I'm not on the way or near my full potential, then what the fuck's going on?
And whose potential?
Right.
Right? That's what it really goes back to. When people tell us you're not reaching your potential, you're telling me that you've seen me and you've noticed things about me that could go to this next degree.
Right.
But if I don't care, then there's no potential to be reached.
Right.
There's nothing. And that, like, I feel like that element is part of why I started the Improv for Wellness work, because it's like no one's teaching you how to identify those things. Let me back up. There are a lot of people that teach this stuff. There's a lot of people that help reveal, and I think there's a lot of spiritual work and just social emotional learning work that is trying its best to enter these systems or reach people after they're out of them. And that's where a lot of unlearning starts to occur. And I think that this generation of youth is really just aware of, okay, I'm in this system and it's affecting me these ways, and then I don't really have a choice right now.
Right.
So they're doing their best to like keep themselves protected during something that they may not have the power to change. But then you see people building their collectives and really voicing out like, hey, this school system is hurting me, or hey, we need to change this aspect, this thing, and all that. Because at the end of the day, a lot of school systems, again, as an observer, but it's still what I see, our school structures are hierarchical, and they are working from a place of bestowing power and empowerment to students. you can still do that with good intentions and with a beautiful heart.
Yeah.
But if you don't work with students, whatever age, and if you don't believe that they have something to offer, then the approach is they are lesser than, let me rise them up, rather than what I think teaching can be, and why I can think of it as like an art form, is I know this thing and I know it so much and I care about it so much that I would like to share it with other people, and I will do my best to share in a way that includes you and lets you be involved, but not in a way that controls you. And the school system, I think majority of individuals that are educators, that are principals, that are all these people, they do and want to take that approach.
Right.
And then there are things like budgets. And then there are things like time management. And then there are things like testing. Then there's things like all this stuff that, at the end of the day too, is like, okay, if I don't accomplish some of these goals, my school may not have free and reduced lunch.
Right.
So maybe we should focus on that so that my students can eat.
Right.
And it's like just these really shitty things that educators and administrators have to come up to sometimes. And sometimes they don't care. And that's very true too.
Yeah.
But benefit of the doubt for most people, they see it,
yeah,
and they talk about it, and they're burnt out.
Right.
And they're tired. And it's just like, why the people that stay in the system are doing some heavy work because they are aware of all the stuff that's like, what are we going to do? How do we help? How do I feel confident as I approach this?
Right.
It's hard.
It is. And I've heard, and the disparaging thing for me with that statement is that I've heard so many teachers that have abstract ideas, that are different approaches to learning, different approaches to class sizes, different approach to just like getting away from didactic learning, that are, gung ho. Yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And then I talk to them a year or two later and like, yeah, I got out of it.
Right.
I'm done. I'm in psychiatry now. And that's a lot. That's a big change. A lot of people are going from teaching to psychiatry or therapy of some sort, because it's a lot of transferable skills and you're still trying to help. Right. But your hands aren't as tied, and I think that's a lot of what's happening right now is that, I'm not throwing any shade at all at the teachers, at the administrators, at the principals, vice principals, whatever it is. It's a system that we're a part of now that we are just trying to manage, but I don't know if we realize why we're managing it anymore. There's the idea of just evolving things, like government right now. Government has been stagnant for a very long time. Mm-hmm. It hasn't really progressed with the technology that we have. Like, we should be able to vote from our phones. There's enough security and secure ways to do this to where we can say, hey, Washington residents, we're going to put an overpass in Bellevue at 8th Street. Would you like to vote on that? Or would you like to defer that to your congressional member? You have the choice. Yes, I do want to vote on it. Cool. It's going to be on January 10th. A pop-up will come up, say, hey, Adam, we're voting on that fucking thing. Do you want it? Yes or no? Hey, yes, I do. I want easier access to fucking 8th Street, right? Or no, you know what? My congressperson, I trust them. They can do that, right? But no, we have to go to a ballot. We have to get a ballot mailed to us. We have to fight people that are fighting us at the fucking ballot boxes now because they think we're voting wrong. So now it's discouraging people to go out and actually do the thing. If I mail my vote in, oh, no, that doesn't look like my signature. We're not going to count that. And not to go through that. It's like all these things this cumbersome process. And like the conspiratorial side of me that looks at this stuff knows that, I'm not saying I'm one side or the other, but the Republican side tends to do better with low voter turnout. So in the conspiratorial theory is that Republicans make it harder for people to vote so that they can have a better sway in the voting process.
Absolutely.
Let's just take all this shit out of it and make it easier, right? And same thing with schooling. I think there's just an opportunity now that we know what schooling does, right? We've done schooling for a very fucking long time. We've done a lot of different ways of schooling. We just got our schooling system crashed by COVID. And I think for me personally, one of the biggest frustrations that I had about homeschooling was the realization of my ignorance and disassociation with my child's learning process. Like Common Core math. I heard my kids talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, 2 + 2 = 4. You put a line in the thing, right? Yeah, it's all good.
Right.
And then, no, they're doing fucking tic-tac-toe math, right? And this. And then you
Yeah.
circle the intersecting points. And to me, that just made me feel like ignorant person. Like, oh, I have no idea what's going on in the world anymore. And if we're not conscious enough of that, then that adds to the frustration of like, well, shit, now I have to do this with you. Now I have to learn this with you. And right. And I have all these other things to do. I have work to do. I have all this. I'm a fucking integral part of this society, blah, 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 whatever. Right. And we get frustrated because of things like that. And so again, like that's my own personal journey with my frustration of homeschooling, was realizing how not plugged into my kids' schooling process that I was, right? And if I was just with that emotion and just lean into that aggravation, that wouldn't have helped my kids. And how many times that it happened around the world with homeschooling,
Sure.
right? Without us even realizing it, so, but at the same time, we saw a populace of kids excel through homeschooling and through Zoom learning, whereas they didn't in classroom learning. Right. And so, kind of our point earlier about, all these expectations about straight A's and all this shit, we know that kids don't all learn the same way.
No.
And there's maybe a populace, maybe even the majority of a populace, a slight majority learn in the current school system way that we're working through. But what about all these other kids? Do they just get shunned aside and they're not good learners?
Yeah.
Now you're just average, you're below average. That sticks with you for a long fucking time. If you don't do any work around it, you're going to roll around the rest of your life being below average. That's nowhere to be.
Yeah.
Who's somebody to tell me I'm below average just because I can't get a fucking grade right? Like, no, man. There's different ways about
work.
it.
It's not the way that we use school to start vetting quality of people, and it's not always about it's not always about learning. It's also about identifying the haves and have-nots. It's also about identifying, like, here are sports people, here are arts people, here's all of this, which could be a really beautiful process of people discovering. But then we also live in a system where from elementary school, there's a large population of parents that are making strategic moves so that their kid is set up, their kid has the education that they deserve, and that they can get into a college that may not like if they came from low-funded school in no-name place, And so now it is a game of life or death for a lot of people. My parents spent a lot of time figuring out what places they could or couldn't move to, what apartments to live in, so that one, I could be in specific schools, and if we moved, that I wouldn't move schools.
Right.
So that I'd be with my community, or I'd be with the same people I've had, or be whatever.
Right.
And that becomes just a whole nother layer to the game on top of thinking about colleges and universities, where then it's like, okay, maybe we'll get you to focus on this specific thing. We'll get you to focus on basketball so that you can get a scholarship and you can go to school. So now all of a sudden, all of this discovery, all of this learning, all of this stuff, even getting straight A's, isn't necessarily about like, I love this thing, I want to excel in this thing, I want to grasp it. It is, well, let me make sure it's on the paper so that I can go to this next place, or let me do these extracurricular activities because it's gonna, like you were mentioning with the factory workers and all that stuff, let me boost my resume right now. Let me get all this stuff so that the world takes me seriously later on.
Right.
And what a massive amount of pressure. And of course, people would like disassociate and turn off from school beyond that this system doesn't match their learning style.
Right.
It's like, well, that all of these things, and you have to be born into a family that cares about that stuff. Otherwise, you have to learn it on your own, and otherwise people will get mad at you because don't you see how this is going to ruin your future? It's like, no, actually I don't, because this is a learned skill
Yeah.
and a learned understanding to see how all of these pieces relate. And when it's intimidating, you don't want to seem stupid.
Right.
You don't want to seem like you don't get it. I still get scared paying my taxes because I'm like, I don't want to ask anyone for help because I feel like I was supposed to figure that out a long time ago.
Right.
I have my business license. I own that. How can I own that and not know exactly what taxes I pay for and all that stuff?
Right.
But that just gets smaller and smaller and more intimate for people too as time goes on.
Yeah. It seems to me that maybe one of the reasons that we haven't really adjusted the school system is because the people. So there is a populace of people that have figured it out, like you mentioned earlier, right? My oldest daughter, actually both my kids, are really good in students. They're really good. They figured it out. They did good. They did very well with the pendulum swing of learning, with online learning and homeschooling, and they still did well. They've kind of figured it out. So maybe that's part of it. Is the people that have figured it out are so scared of the rules changing because they figured it out, right? They know the strategic moves to make.
Sure.
My kid wants to have this tutor so they can learn this skill, so they can go to this college, then they can have this career. Well, not everybody works like that. And have really kind of understood that maybe the mass populace isn't the best at school. Right. There's a small population, a small percentage of the kids and the adults that have grown up and that have been good at school and they can progress. And even people that weren't good at school, they still have progression. Right. But maybe that's one of the reasons why the school system hasn't changed as much as we feel like it should, because they're afraid of the rules changing and then having to adapt to those rules and learn a new system and learn a new way of doing it. And it's like, well, fuck, I've already figured this out. Right.
Yeah. And, there's definitely a lot of people that want school to stay the same.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that want school to stay the same subconsciously and that want school to stay the same very consciously, because it can be a tool for a lot of stuff. School can be a tool of oppression. It can be a tool of white supremacy. It can be a tool for all of these things. And it's why you can go to neighborhood predominantly black and that school is low funded because of redlining, because of this, because of that. All the laundry list goes down. And also you have to go to that school.
Right.
You live here.
Yep. You're in that zip code.
You're in that zip code. That's where you're going. Mm-hmm. And that becomes hard. And for the people that subconsciously want the school to stay that way, there's also lots of elements of trauma that are involved with that. Even if it's just, teaching with the idea of punishment, with the idea of detention, of expulsion.
Right.
And, we've done the numbers. We've gotten the data to know that, like, expulsion doesn't help.
Right.
And detention isn't really helping. And what behaviors are we teaching through certain kinds of punishment rather than consequences or rather than solutions? Right. If a student is arriving late to class every single day and we punish them with detention because they're late every single day, well, our hope is that you get the lesson, don't be late.
Right.
Rather than, hey, why are you late? Why are you late? And how can we work together to figure out how you cannot be late? Because it affects you this way and that way. And then this is the part where we work with students, even if they're elementary school, because we're trying to teach the skills that they'll need for life, which also then just gets to a whole rabbit hole of why an educator should be paid exponentially more, because they're trying to teach these life skills, trying to practice social emotional learning, trying to practice just being social with other people, and at the same time going back to the schedule of school, 8 a.m. to 2, 3, 4 p.m., you are also the caregiver. You are the daycare. You are the service. And back to what you were saying about like having the kids at home, and now I'm involved. Now I'm having to pay attention to all these pieces. I think a lot of people got face to face with what a school does and what an educator does, and they, on the bare minimum, watch your kids during that time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that can happen during that time. And when they come back home and they have to stay at home, I totally understand why that would be so much, because also you have a job and you have things that you're going to do. And we were living in a way where it's like, this was the agreed upon thing.
Right.
I'll take care of this stuff. You're going to go to school and I'll be there to catch you at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
But then everything gets tossed around and everything's different, and I don't know. I'm trailing off a little bit, but it's just so much.
Well, it is so much, and I think so. I have a second podcast called Zen and Not Zen, and it's a little more comedic. And we did a topic maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, about what we wish high school would have taught us. And going through that, what I realized is how much we expect school to teach us. Not just like, math, social studies, science, all that shit, but like how to balance your checkbook, how to be a good human being, how to be balanced, how to all this stuff, like all these things that we've kind of just passed the buck to school and said, hey, why isn't school teaching that shit? Common sense. Why doesn't school teach common sense? Well, common sense isn't fucking common. Right? Common sense is very based off of you as a human being, right? So I think we are putting a lot of expectations on these teachers with not the monetary recipients, right? They're not getting compensated. They're barely scraping by. Like I know teachers that have like 3 jobs because they can't just teach. They also serve tables and they also do other things because they just can't make a living. Mm-hmm. So I think there's definitely a restructuring. And I think that could bring more qualified people to that profession. When we make it something that's sustainable income, that has benefits, that has something that growth potential, like all this stuff. But we're in a place right now where it feels like the teachers are just being taken advantage of and being put into expectations that they're not ready to receive. Yeah. And not to say that they don't want to, but maybe they're just not set up for it, right? And that's one of the things I love about what you're doing, right? So it's like teaching as an art form, right? And so in the classes that you're teaching and these improv classes that you're teaching, you probably have a good mix of the kids, right? The kids that are straight A students that have figured out school, the kids that barely scrape by but love theater, right? But so there's this mix of kids that are all learning in different ways.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, teaching as an art form, like how do you approach that vastness of learning skill, of approachability for the kids? How do you come at that?
Yeah. So with the teaching as an art form side of stuff, it's almost, I'm still like gaining confidence in saying this, but it's like, I think as a teacher, and again, this is why the system can make this so hard, but as a teacher, I think you have to work from a place first of, this is for me. This is for me. I'm going to focus on the stuff I care about for a little bit first and just figure out like, what do I want to share? What do I care about? So that you approach being with students not from a place of your self-worth is dictated on how they react.
Okay.
And because a lot of times when we think about teaching and all of that, we think that the measure of a good teacher is how much a student learned and how much they seemed to engage with your class and seemed to engage with your exercise activities materials, rather than just letting it be like whatever their experience is what their experience is. It is my duty to be safe and healthy with you, to be equitable with you, and to do my best to create an invitation to this material that, one, is understandable to you, but two, an invitation that you can say no to. If I force you to learn this, I'm controlling you, I'm in charge of you. This is not a learning environment anymore.
Right.
And so with my improv classes, like I knew that I love theater. I love all the techniques and styles of acting that I learned because for listeners who may not know, there's a lot of different schools of thought for acting. There's a lot of different schools of thought for breathing. There's a lot of different schools of thought for how do we tap into our imaginations and use our bodies to tell stories. And a lot of them are very, they're very much, a lot of people in my class would joke about how it's like theater teaches you to be a better person.
Right.
And the reason is more so that it just gives you more awareness of what your body does, how you think, and maybe ways to activate certain parts. And so with like, gosh, I have now like over 10 years of improv experience.
Wow.
Because I started in high school.
Yeah.
So actually it'd probably be like, if I'm 28, then probably like 12, something like that.
All right.
I learned all this stuff in improv, and then I started doing acting classes, and I can fuse those ideas together. And then also there's all this wellness work that my parents exposed me to and that I found on my own. And so we can fuse all that stuff together. And now I'm making curriculum that I just like. I just like it. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. And the activities and exercises are all based from, if I wanted to learn something this way, how would I like it to be exposed to me?
Yeah.
And how would I like to have seen it? Or what do I think would have been effective for me?
Yeah.
And then I just write that down. And I create the exercises, and I create things from whole cloth, and I tailor exercises I've done and shift something so that it does something else. And then I basically just go into a class and I say, hey, this is all the creative stuff I've just been doing. In a lot of ways, to me, it's no different than if I sit down and I work on one of my plays.
Okay.
And if I write a play, I'm doing the same exact thing. I'm doing the same exact creativity and self-expression. Now, instead of I'm going to write these characters to elicit these thoughts and feelings and expressions from an audience, I'm just going to give you exercise and activities that hopefully guide you towards things that I don't want you to learn this specific thing, but I want you to be exposed to these certain thoughts and ideas so that you can decide from there what's their value. And like you were saying, we can get into the mental part of it and start to talk about like theory and memorization and why some of these things are this way. But at the core of it, first thing is just your experience and centering what do you believe and think about it. Let's talk about that. And then if it's helpful, I can share the knowledge from my years of experience as to the practical parts of it.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about you first, because otherwise it's about me.
Yeah. I love that. One thing that came to me when you were talking about that is there's been I can't remember the name of the study, but there was a study done a while back about the impact of reading novels, right? And what this study found was that people that read novels have a higher approach for empathy, because they're able to put themselves in other people's situations because we've mentally done that. Okay, I've been Anne Frank, reading Anne Frank's book, hiding in a fucking attic.
Yeah.
Waiting for Nazis to try to hope to not find me, right? I've never done that in life before, but like I've read about it and I was imaginatory, able to put myself into that space. So when we read these novels, when we have this different approach to life that we can't physically learn because of whatever we're doing, right? The life that I'm born into, that's a way we create that empathy, because we're reading stories that aren't our lives. And so in a way, it's what you're doing is giving another opportunity to create that empathy, to create that opportunity for people to step into these roles that they might not have played before. But also not saying, okay, you're going to be a shepherd, and this is how that shepherd acts, and this is how that shepherd thinks. It's like, no, okay, you're going to be a shepherd. You have 10 sheep and a sheepdog. You have 100 acres. Go. be a shepherd, right? Outside of that, it's like, okay, well, shit, okay, well, I got to make sure this flock stays here. I got to make sure they stay fed. There's no coyotes that come around and eat them, right? So you start creating your own stuff in your own head because, okay, this is what a shepherd would be, right? And so instead of just saying, hey, be a fucking shepherd, here's your checklist to be a shepherd, right? It's allowing the person to step into that role and then to figure it out and say, okay, this is what that would be like. That's what that would be like. And it gives them life lessons just from a thought experiment.
Yeah.
You know, and that's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Let's approach things in a different way. What size groups do you usually work with?
It can vary. I mean, I'll work with sizes of like 22, 24, sometimes 8, and then sometimes I've just done one-on-one stuff, you know, and it's all, what can get tricky is always just what the client hopes for from the class, because we can accomplish anything with the Improv for Wellness work, and usually I just want to focus on like, let's just give these self-reflection tools, let's just allow people to like play around, and let's let people like not like it if they don't like it. There's no reason to convince somebody that it's important because I already like it. So, and I've done it long enough to know that it resonates for some people, and if you don't like it, it's my job to figure out if there's something I can do to make it more inviting but not make it more likable.
Right. Yeah.
So with those class sizes, it can just vary of like, you know, sometimes we have to change these exercises because I can't just be with everybody at the same time. But it can be fun. It can be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, there's something you hit on earlier. It's the holder of knowledge. And I think a lot of times we look at the teacher as that holder of knowledge. And so whether we realize it or not, we're kind of putting these folks on a pedestal. You know, if I don't reach that level of knowledge that they say is right, then I'm going to be wrong and I'm going to be in the shadow, right? And I think we need to really get rid of that. We need to humanize this stuff because you know, as a parent, my youngest kid she's almost 14 and she still is in the why. I wouldn't call it a phase, but she still asks why all the time, all the goddamn time. Hey, Dad, why did you just do that? We're going to go do this. Hey, why? I'm like, oh, God. Okay. Why is it the sunset looks beautiful. Why is it pink? Oh, fucking hell. But to that point.
Yeah.
My brothers, both my brothers and I made a very solid commitment, mainly my younger brother, because my younger brother lives up here and has a lot of involvement with Harper's Life. Made a very strong commitment to each other to answer those questions to the best of our abilities. And we did that when she was like 2, right? When she entered into this phase.
Wow.
And so why is the sky blue? Or why is the sky pink? Okay, so there's like gases that get released from all the shit that we put in the air and it reflects off the sun and the ozone layer. And like, it's the best I can do, right? But I'm not just going to be like, it's fucking pink because it's pink. Shut up and go like read your book or play on your tablet, right? No, I want to encourage that because I really want her to ask those questions. I want her to feel comfortable asking those questions and getting an answer that she feels okay with. And so one of those things, so my brother and I, we committed to that. And she still does that to this day. She still asks why all the time. But in a way, I'm an equal to her. I'm not her like omnipotent, like this omnipotent force that's like I'm the answer holder. Because a lot of times I don't know the answer, and I'm saying, you know, I'll tell her, you know what? That's a great question. I don't know the answer. Let's find out together. And that was taught to me by one of my first mentors, Jeff Morgan. Actually, I had him on the podcast a couple weeks ago. And that was the most humanizing thing that I never thought would be a thing, was the admittance of ignorance. Hey, I don't know. Let's go learn together. Wait, my mentor doesn't know the answer to my question? He's the holder of knowledge. He's the person that holds all the knowledge. No, he's not, clearly. And he just proved that to me. And so now we're learning together. And so now he humanized himself with me. So now we're on this journey together. And that meant he can ask me questions.
Yeah.
And when I'm asked questions, it forces me to regurgitate the knowledge and really ruminate on it in a different way and be like, oh, well, this is the way I approach this. And this is what I think. Cool. Okay, that's great. I love that too. Let's go with that, right?
Yeah.
And so, but getting to that place to where we can humanize people, right? We can get them off those pedestals and say, hey, like, we're all in this together, right? Maybe I'm a little older than you, so yeah, I just have innate knowledge because I'm just older than you. I have experiential knowledge, right? But to my point earlier, when my kid showed me Common Core math, she was teaching me. There was no like, oh, let's figure this out together. No, my kid was like, no, Dad, this is how we do this. And I'm like, you're full of shit. Let me show you the 2-second way to do that, you know? And then we had this cool back and forth about like, oh, this is the way I learned it. Oh, this is the way we're being taught it now, right? And there was a common kind of like a common learning moment between the two of us instead of this just like, do what I say.
Yeah, and then it becomes about the relationship.
Yeah.
And now it's about like, now it is about that connection. It is about that beautiful moment of we can learn this together.
Yeah.
And we can meet each other at this equal playing field so that we can grow, and also so that we can start to reinforce that belief that everyone is my equal.
Right.
And I am equal to everyone. And that no amount of knowledge is going to prove that wrong or right.
Right.
And I don't know, like I just think of my partner. I've got to meet some people that have done a lot of work in their life and that want to work with me. And I would talk to my partner Brittany and be like, these people want to work with me, and like I'm just excited to like have that kind of mentor in my life and like learn from them because they just have a lot of years of experience that I don't. And she would always remind me of like, yes, that's beautiful to have a mentor, and like you don't have to treat them like they're your mentor.
Right.
Like you've done so much, you have experienced so much, you have thoughts. And so like she talked about how like make sure your mentor is your friend in a lot of ways, so that you don't, like you say, put them on that pedestal, but also so that you don't keep approaching, you don't allow all that you know to go dim all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And just be like, oh, like, well, you did this and
Yeah.
you did that. We're all brilliant. And if we can, again, part of the Improv for Wellness work is like, if we can believe that we have something to offer and that other people have something to offer us, we can get in that cycle so much easier. And I love the idea of a world where that gets to, that question of am I valuable,
Right.
gets to go away, so that we can start to take in, and this also connects to like the teaching as an art form. Everybody has something that the universe has never experienced. So how can we get you to acknowledge that and not even look for it? It's because you exist that everything that you do has never been done the way you've done it.
Right.
And if we get you to own that and to claim that and not try to be someone else, then we just expand that spectrum of humanity and of that perspective. Because like you said, being the master of knowledge on a topic, sometimes that's how we view teaching.
Right.
That not even for like how we put them on a pedestal, but that that you cannot be a teacher until you completely understand something and you are a master of it, and that you could break it down this way, that way, sideways, all of that. And I'm really interested in, again, thinking of teaching as just something that you care about.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this a little before, but you know, you can teach someone your favorite TV show. You can teach someone the trail that you like to walk on, and share with them like why that's important to me.
Yeah.
And you don't need a classroom. You don't need you standing up front in front of a bunch of people. You don't need someone to necessarily look at you with wide eyes and be like, teach me, teach me, teach me. It's just that creative opportunity of sharing your perspective.
Right.
And in letting somebody engage with that. And maybe you do that through exercises and activities. And I think a lot of people could if they wanted to.
Right.
Here's this exercise of why, I don't know, I've been talking about the show Ozark with my partner all the time.
Okay.
So here's an exercise of like, why does this show matter? And like, you make that exercise and you give it to somebody, and like, that would be wild to me. Like, thinking about that would be like so cool to me.
Yeah.
Or you can just share. Like, oh, I like it because of these reasons. What do you think on
Yeah.
those reasons? And then we can just start to expand what teacher means so that you, with whatever you're into, could be like, I don't know. I think of, we'll do yoga, right?
Okay.
And take my mom, for example, who
Mm-hmm.
was on the podcast a long time ago.
Fantastic human being.
Yes, fantastic human being. She loved learning about yoga, and she did the whole gambit and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then she knew her personal history was, I love handstands. I love inversions. So let me focus on what do I love about those things and how would I like to share that with other people. And she did that as a workshop format, but all of that beginning stuff is creativity and expression, and invite a friend over just to try out some of this stuff and be like, what happens when I offer this information this way? What does that make you do? And so I just would love people to just teach something and take away what they think teaching should look like or what it could be, because then we're going to get a lot of more information and specialties that we've never experienced.
You know, there's what unlocked in me. Thank you for that. That was beautiful.
Yeah,
that unlocked a lot into me.
That was a lot of different tangents, so I appreciate you following me.
I followed that Pong game all around, bro. So, all right, so artificial intelligence, right? People are scared to shit of artificial intelligence.
Sure,
It's every right to be, because there's a lot of movies about it, fuck all this shit, right? So, what excites me about artificial intelligence, it kind of highlighted through your discussion just now. If we can get to a point to where we embrace artificial intelligence to do the things we don't need to be doing. I don't need to drive a fucking truck from coast to coast to deliver goods fucking from Maine to Florida and back to California, right? We can automate that. Now, granted, there's a lot of people that are involved in that work system that we'll need to figure out. And there's a lot of ideas like universal basic income, blah, blah, blah. This isn't the podcast for that. But so I don't want you to think I'm just like blue skying this idea of artificial intelligence, right? There's ideas out there to compensate humanity for what the jobs that are going to be taken, right? So if we get to a point to where we embrace artificial intelligence and release some of the bullshit, sorry, not bullshit, but some of the menial jobs that we're doing because of whatever reason, and we get the ability to focus on what we love and what we want. So your teaching idea, what do you want to teach? Because we're all teachers in our own way, right? If we can really get to that point to where we can explore our humanity, because all of the normal, like the hard things that we need to do are taken care of through automation or whatever. Think about how artistic and how explorative our lives could be when I don't have to my dad was a truck driver. Right? My dad was a coast to coast truck driver. He was gone for 3 months at a time, home for a weekend. 3 months at a time, home for a weekend. My entire childhood, for all three of my brothers and myself, right? My mom raised 3 boys on her own, more or less, right? Because my dad was out there just driving the fucking roads, right? Now, he could have done so much different things with his life, right? And he was happy. He was okay with the sacrifices he made. But if we can get to a point to where we can embrace the creativity of our world and really dive into the specialties that we all have, like one of my favorite quotes is, everybody's unique, but nobody's special, right? We all have unique qualities, like you're talking about. Nobody's going to approach this situation the way that you do. Nobody's going to approach the situation the way that I do, right? Experiential, all this stuff. But at the same time, like, we don't want to think that, like, oh, look at me, how special I am because I'm the unique one. No, no. We're all in this together. We're all unique, but nobody's fucking special, right? But when we can really dial into that uniqueness, how much humanity can grow with the freedom of knowing that, like, I don't have to go to this bullshit job that just is sucking my life away because I need that to survive. Now we're in this more open era of life where schooling is now more creative, where our lives are a little more free, to where we can explore the creativity of, like, YouTube is a beautiful thing. Like, you can learn how to do anything on YouTube, TikTok. You have a minor understanding of, like, your basic mechanics, and you watch a video and all of a sudden I'm like sculpting something out of fucking clay. Like, that's great. Let me spend my time doing that shit, right? And so I would love to see what humanity would be like if we could embrace some of that technology that's coming in to give us the free time that we've been striving for since the 70s when all this stuff was being developed, email, fax machines, all this stuff was developed to give us more free time, not dial us deeper into the work that we don't want to fucking do. Right. So that conversation to me just kind of like highlighted that whole idea of embracing artificial intelligence to give us the freedom to explore the creativity of humanity that we really want to.
Totally, yeah. And let's just like get to, I don't know, anything that allows us just to have more space and to like really focus on our humanity. What can we do? What are we bringing to the table? And the things like YouTube and the things that people make channels and create content and all that stuff. And the hard part can definitely be like we've made into an industry and a machine and like there's a way and all that stuff. But on the core level of I have this idea or I want to talk about this thing and I think I know enough to share with somebody or I love it enough to where like I don't know how to share it, but I can talk about it.
Right.
So let me do the blog. Let me do the I got friends that have a TV show recap podcast,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And just like let's just go through it and you don't have to be special to have an opinion and
Right.
to share what you think and like that just becomes really beautiful to me. And if we can start to see like just the different ways that teaching already shows up in our life, like what is like a story or a movie or just any fiction book, but someone teaching you a perspective or idea that they have. John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm going to teach you about what it would be like if people were in this situation and there's a alien and they didn't know about each other and all that stuff. And I'll teach you the story that also then kind of teaches you about like just how we don't trust each other and all of those kinds of things.
Right.
I don't know John Carpenter's The Thing as well as I thought I did.
Well, so in Buddhism, what those are called are Jataka tales.
Right.
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 So Jataka tales are basically the story of Buddha's life, all of his lives that he's lived up until the point of him being Buddha, and him remembering all those lives and telling stories about the situational stories about those parts of his life. And they're usually allegoric. There's a moral story, and there's some kind of way of like learning from that experience. And that's one of my favorite things to read is those Jataka tales, or even like the Ramayana I'm reading right now, which is like an old Hindu scripture that talks about Rama, Prince Rama, going through being banished into the woods for 14 years and having to survive, and all these different like beings and monsters that he encounters, and all this like the morals that he has to like adhere to, and to keep his his honor the way he wants to keep it, so he's constantly thinking about like how this is going to reflect about him. Is he going to be able to still like hold that princeship that he wants to, are people still going to look up to him and do all these things because his morals are very, very front and center for him, so reading things like that, like you're talking about, that lands so much with us because we love stories. Humans love stories. There's the Toltec way of looking at the human physiology is there's 4 different ways. How comfortable are you dancing, singing, telling stories, and sitting in silence?
I've never heard that.
I
love that.
It's such a good little snapshot. And for me, when I look at that, mine is dancing. Like I'm getting past my stage fright with singing, and chanting's been very helpful for that. Yeah. I love storytelling. I love telling stories. It's one of the reasons I love this podcast, because I tell stories all day long.
Right.
And I'm a really good meditator. I found that out. I love sitting in silence. The thing that always escapes me is open movement. And
interesting.
And it scares me. It terrifies me to ecstatic dance, to dance in general. And so, but that, that little quick snapshot of like looking at my personal constitution. And so when I learned that modality a couple of years back, it's been that dancing, that's really been the thing that I want to focus on. Right. And having that reflection to me was beautiful. Right. And that wasn't a curriculum in a classroom. That was an open sourced book that was saying that a teacher referred me to.
Yeah.
That one of my mentors referred me to. It was like, hey, you should read this book. It might land with you.
And then that becomes beautiful. Like I love the idea of just in people's lives, if everyone just taught a 1-day workshop of anything, and like you could just see so many people bring you something so beautiful. It doesn't even have to be good. You don't have to, again, it's not, teaching doesn't have to be about your students learn something. You expose them to something, and maybe that's enough.
Right.
And just having that idea of like, oh, we could go down this route, or we could think of things this way, or we could have these 4 categories, and even if you never use them, they're always going to be with you now.
Right.
And now you just get to decide on what that means to you. And I don't know, it's just opportunities for all of us to reclaim our creativity, reclaim our self-worth, and offer something to ourselves and to other people.
Yeah. And I think that's really great. We're all teachers in our own way. We all have that ability. Maybe some of us are a little intimidated by that label, teacher. But there's, I think there's a kind of just wrapping this up a little bit, but
Sure.
I think there's a way that, to me, this kind of like identifies our lack of ambition and stepping into our eldership. I talked to a friend of mine, Mariko, about this about maybe almost a year ago, but there's we've been raised in an era, let's say since the 70s, of health and wellness, right? Beauty products.
Yeah.
Take the wrinkles away, look younger, all this shit, right? Hair dyes, all this stuff. Nose jobs are pretty common now. Boob jobs are pretty common now. I mean, there's common like minor plastic surgeries that we just do on a regular basis, like Botox, right?
Sure.
And I'm not throwing shade at anybody that wants to look younger, feel younger, do you, right? But what I've noticed, and some of the conversations I've had, what I'm noticing is that, so there's stages, there's archetypes in life, right? And part of our eldership is stepping into, for the masculine it's sage, for the feminine it's called crone.
Yeah.
And if we're not moving with the natural pace of life, let's say nature, right? Let's say we don't move with the seasons. We just skip winter. Winter's cold. Fuck winter. We're just going to go straight from fall to back to spring, right? Things need time to die. They need to die. They need to have times to go internal to think about what we want to birth in spring, right? So if we just skipped winter, we'd fuck a lot of shit up, right? So if we're skipping our elderhood, right, because we're always trying to be younger, act younger, play younger, look younger, all this stuff, we're dismissing a vast amount of knowledge to pass down to that next generation. And I think there's a lot of that's happening right now. And that might be one of the reasons why we're so afraid to step into our teacher, because we're afraid of the stigma that being a teacher might put on us, because as we're an adult teacher, that means we're older. And nobody wants to be older. We want to look younger, right? And if we're not embracing the age that we're stepping towards, then we're not also embracing the knowledge that we're stepping towards. And if we don't embrace that knowledge, then we don't have the answers to those questions when the kids ask why. And then we get frustrated. Just fucking shut up and go look at your tablet, right? That's what it's there for.
Yeah.
No, put your tablet down. Ask me why. Ask a question. Why is the grass green? Everything's green, actually, right? That's one of the weird things I've learned. Everything's green. It's just our eyes are like reflect light in a different way, and it allows it to see like different shades of colors. Bonkers, right?
Yeah.
But so one of my things that I'm really working towards, and I have to check myself at times because I was born in the West and I have a Western type of mind, and we are ageist at times, right? I very conscious of my excitement in stepping into my eldership and being an older man, being 42, almost 43, getting gray hairs, getting wrinkles, allowing the things that I was once ashamed of my life, the stories of my life, to now be learning moments for other people. So they don't have to experience my life. They don't have to be a drug dealer. They don't have to be fucking violent child, right? They can just understand that, hey, wow, I heard this great story from this guy that used to do this shit and turned his life around. Hey, guess what? I'm not going to sell drugs. Cool. All right, good. At least you're not going to
Yeah.
do that, right?
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of wisdom in that vulnerability of stepping into our age that that might have been lost on a generation, but I think we're in a process of reclaiming that age and being proud of it.
Yeah.
Being proud of being an older man, being proud of being an older woman. Take the word older out of it, just being proud of being an experienced human being,
Yeah.
right? We all have experiences. We've all been through shit. We've all figured out, right? Everybody alive right now has 100% success rate with dealing with shitty fucking days, right? You've done it. You've figured it out, right? It might still suck, but you've made it through that previous day. You can make it through today, right? Teach somebody how you did it. Right, give them an opportunity to learn from you. Be the bringer of the knowledge, so that you can open yourself up to be the receiver of knowledge too.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think it goes all ways with stepping into your age, right? We tend to say we pass down knowledge as we step into our age and as we get older, and we don't always believe that the 5-year-old's going to pass knowledge to us. The 10-year-old's going to pass knowledge to us. And when they do, we think of it as this like wild moment. This young person taught me something, right? And I would be surprised too. Like, I wasn't expecting that today.
Yeah.
But if we can step into just that idea of like, we all are going to offer something. And if we embrace that it's possible, we can love when it happens and maybe not be so surprised when it happens. And as we continue to get older, we can keep stepping into exactly what you're saying of like, let's be what we are. Let's not skip the phases. I don't have to not be 28 right now.
Right.
And we can just see what it reveals. And it doesn't have to be a specific image as we get older. If you want it, just be who you are as you're going through it, and get to learn the ways to continue to figure out who you are. Because we use that phrase all the time, be who you are, and we don't tell people, how do we do that?
Yeah. Right.
Right. If we're in a world that's telling us what society should be and how culture goes and how people act and all that stuff, then you're kind of going to get fed a lot of what you think you should be, whether they're saying it that way or not.
Right.
And how do you just get to reflect and reclaim and be like, cool, how can I just be comfortable with me and take the actions to gain more comfortability for myself?
Oh man, that's a bold statement. I like mentioned earlier, I'm 42 years old, and I've been trying to find myself since I was a child, and it's one of the most difficult, also rewarding processes I've been through. But I think one of the things that I've really understood about that process is how much it's inadvertently, subconsciously beaten into us, from a very young age. Fit in this box, and if you don't, then there's something wrong with you. And so I think my parting thoughts would be to really explore that human that you are, right? Don't let an adult or an authoritative figure tell you that that's not how you should act. There's maybe ways that are better, but you're not going to know it until you experience it. And I think there's a lot of that. We try to shelter our kids from the shit that we went through. And by no means am I saying I want my kids to go deal drugs and be a violent child. But at the same time, like, some of the best lessons I've learned in life were me getting out of shit that I got myself into. And whether I got out scot-free and was like, cool, didn't get arrested, or got arrested and was like, shit, okay, doing some time, I'm going to think about this. Those are very important things for me. And I look back now and I feel the importance and I feel the lessons that were learned. And I realize and I see the human being that was there, the child that was crying or scared or whatever the fuck happened. But 30 years later, goddamn, I'm so happy I went through that shit. I'm happy I had a life. I'm happy I experienced life. I couldn't have done it any other way, And so I think that's my biggest message is experience your life. right? You'll find teachers along the way. You definitely will. You'll find some teachers along the way, whether they're paid to be your teacher or they're just a person that just gives you like a one-liner, right? I've had some of the best information just dropped on a one-line pass by. I'm like, wait, what the fuck was that?
You can't just say that.
Whoa, come on back. Let's conversate about that, right? Rock my whole world
in a moment.
So
it's the sacred story.
Yeah. We're all teachers. We all can be taught. We all have knowledge to share. And I think it's getting the confidence to know that about yourself.
And trust it.
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you for providing this kind of content for our young adults to give them something else to chew on, give them a different approach, give them a different type of human being to associate with. So thank you for doing that. You know, I think that the more that we can have that embracement of non-traditional teaching and meeting the human beings where they are and not this expectation of where they should be, would be very excited to see a world that we step into like that.
Thank you. And thank you for your curiosity and just the way that you hold space and teach your students, right? We're all just trying to do right by people and trying to make space for people. And I think that we're going to learn 20 years from now the things that we could have done better during that phase.
Right.
But if we can just stay open and stay caring, like we're doing the best we can right now. And hopefully everybody can have that opportunity and also can step into their wise self. And I don't know, I would love for people, if anything, just to like try and think of something that you would like to share with others.
There you go.
And just see where it leads you. You don't have to do anything. Just think of what you would share with others.
Yeah, love that. Homework. There you go.
There's your homework.
So mad love to all the teachers, all the people, the facilitators, the mentors out there. Like, just mad props to y'all. We're not this podcast was to help support y'all, not to throw any shade, but also to remind everybody that you do have that mentor. You are a teacher. You are a mentor. You are that bringer of knowledge. So when you find the confidence, step into it.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with Teague and I. Please check out the show notes for any links to get in touch with Teague, myself, or check out what Improv for Wellness is doing. Please like or subscribe to the show and feel free to send it to anybody you might benefit from it. Obeisance and love. We'll see y'all next time.